Chapter 1. Peace. Peace is the foundation for development. The flower of peace is not sustained by poverty and want. Peace is a day-to-day problem, the product of a multitude of events and judgments. Peace is not an is, it is a becoming. Unless the desire for peace is expressed in terms of concrete achievements and thus gives a sense of assurance and serenity to humanity, mere pious hope constitutes only self-delusion. The essential prerequisite for economic and social contentment is world peace, and without such contentment, the weeds of discontent luxuriate and threats of peace develop. The great nations of the world do well to remember that in the modern age, even their own fates are not wholly in their hands. Peace demands the united efforts of us all. Where there is no lack of goodwill, all international disputes can be resolved. All nations, whatever their political persuasions, can live together in peace. Peaceful coexistence is not merely the absence of war. The word itself is an empty bottle. It is for us to give it content and meaning. Peace has become even more necessary to mankind than ever before. The alternatives confronting the government of today are no annihilation and complete doom of mankind. It has now become the noble responsibility of Christians and people of other faiths and leaders throughout the world to pray and to work hard for the preservation of world peace. Memories of past injustice should not divert us from the more pressing business at hand. We must live in peace with our former colonizers, shunning recrimination and bitterness, and forswearing the luxury of vengeance and retaliation, lest the acid of hatred erode our souls and poison our hearts. Let us act as befits of dignity, which we claim for ourselves as Africans, proud of our own special qualities, distinctions, and abilities. Our efforts as free men must be to establish new relationships, devoid of any resentment and hostility, restored to our belief and faith in ourselves as individuals, dealing on a basis equality with other equally free people. We desire nothing but peace and the opportunity quietly and without hindrance to march along the path of progress. The teachings of the gospel in Africa, in the past centuries, has served as a guiding factor of instrument for the freedom and independence now enjoyed by many Africans throughout the continent. As St. Paul said, "Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty." The responsibility for safeguarding world peace is not limited to the great powers. Peace and war affect not only the big powers but all mankind, and are therefore the concern of all peoples of the world. We must ensure that disputes in Africa are settled peacefully. If our continent is not free from internecine strife, how can we hope to influence strife? How can we hope to influence others whose disputes endanger the peace of the world? Never fail to reflect the patient faith of all people that only through discussions, collaboration, agreement, and enforcement of the will of mankind can world peace and stability be achieved. The preservation of peace and the guaranteeing of man's basic freedoms and rights require courage and eternal vigilance, courage to speak and act, and if necessary to suffer and die for truth and justice. Eternal vigilance is the principle that the least transgression of international morality shall not go undetected and unremedied. These lessons must be learned anew by each succeeding generation, and that generation is fortunate indeed, which learns from its own bitter experience. Warfare has never made and can never make an affirmative contribution to the welfare of mankind. Good cannot grow out of evil. The life of the world is such that the period of constructive achievement are followed by period of destruction. The period of construction being peace and the period of destruction. The period of construction being peace and the period of destruction being uncertainty. In the pondering over the life, the goodness, humility, and sacrifice of the Savior of the world, in looking at He laws which He give us, how much should we be ashamed to call ourselves Christian people, and yet not to follow in His footsteps? Had we been Christian people, had we been worthy of the name, peace would have reigned on all the face of the earth, and would have risen to the level of those immortal angels who always glorify the eternal God, and the people of the world would no longer remain dived into hostile camps. War and rumors of war are occupying the attention of governments and peoples, but the world is thirsting more than ever for peace and justice. The flames of war have not for a moment ceased to flicker from point to point across the world. There is enough hunger and misery in the world without further war and suffering. United world, the vast sums swallowed by modern arsenals capable of infinite destruction could be employed in providing food for hungry mouths, in eradicating poverty, illiteracy, and disease, in building for the better way of life which man's genius has made it possible. Let us vow to be strong today, only that we may, in our strength, advance the time when it will be possible to beat our swords into plowshares, and when nation shall not make war upon nation. Let us lodge together that this time will not be long. Let us work for trust among men, for disarmament, for peace. I do not think Italy has enriched her history, illustrious on other ways, by sending her sons to massacre Ethiopians, or that her economy, my country, more profit than she could have derived by a loyal collaboration with a peaceful Ethiopia. Disarmament has become the urgent imperative of our time. I do not say this because I equate the absence of out time. I do not say this because I equate the absence of arms to peace, or because I believe that bringing an end to the nuclear arms race automatically guarantees peace, or because the elimination of nuclear warheads from the arsenals of the world will bring in its wake that change in attitude requisite to the peaceful settlement of disputes between nations. Disarmament is vital today, quite simply, because of the immense destructive capacity of which men dispose. Conflicts between nations will continue to arise. The real issue is whether they are to be resolved by force or by resort to peaceful methods and procedures administered by impartial institutions. Unless peaceful solutions are devised, councils of moderation will avail for naught. The major challenges confronting the world today are two: the preservation of peace and the betterment of the living conditions of peace and the betterment of the living conditions of that half of the world which is poor. These are, of course, mutually interdependent. Without peace, it is futile to talk of improving man's lot, and without such improvement, the task of guaranteeing peace is rendered manifold more difficult. The assault on these two problems must be made simultaneously, and all of our actions should be taken with an eye to the solution of both. Where a real and effective disarmament achieved and the funds now spent in the arms race devoted to the amelioration of man's state, were we to concentrate only on the peaceful uses of nuclear knowledge, how vastly and in how short a time might be changed the conditions of mankind. This should be our goal. There is no doubt that the wealth wasted in the destruction of human could, if properly utilized, have contributed enormously towards the welfare of men and the worldwide advancement of civilization. Contrary to certain notions that the preservation of world peace is the exclusive preserve of the great powers, the question of peace or war, because it involves the survival of humanity, is one that is intimately and vitally connected with all the peoples of the world. When we talk of the equality of man, we find also a challenge and an opportunity. A challenge to breathe new life into the ideals enshrined in the Charter, an opportunity to bring men closer to freedom and true equality, and thus closer to a love of peace. Distant worlds have been brought closer, and mysteries have been unfolded. All these achievements should have brought satisfaction to mankind. However, humanity, among other things, has used these great achievements to evil ends. The realization that such a state of affairs is incompatible with the needs of our times has led, of late, all leaders and all men goodwill to determine to live in peace and to coexist in spite of the ideological, social, and economic differences existing in the world. It is, therefore, the sacred duty of all to take advantage of the recent general détente and to strive to bring about enduring peace, so that we may spare ourselves the condemnation of posterity and history. We have on numerous occasions declared our nation's devoted respect for the rights of others, non-interference in the integrity and sovereignty of nations, the peaceful settlement of disputes, support of the principle of collective security as the best guardian of the peace. To live in peace and friendship with all men today, it is only necessary that these principles find the universal observance which we have so long urged. The way to peace among men and nations rests in the even-handed application and enforcement of the principle of the United Nations and the organization of African unity. As long as there are men who believe that one race is superior to the other, and that they can lead the destinies of other men by any means, there shall be no peace. With groundless irredentism and interference in other states' internal affairs, there will be no peace. It is only by adhering to the principles set out in the charters of the United Nations and the Organization of African Unity that we can achieve our aims, and that our unity will grow stronger. The greatest disturbance that may be caused in relations among peoples is the confirmation and consecration of a violation of right and law, homage paid to the aggressor, the sacrifice of a victim. To win the war, to overcome the enemy upon the field, cannot alone ensure the victory in peace. The cause of war must be removed. Each nation's rights must be secure from violation. Above all, from the human mind, must be erased all thoughts of war as a solution. Then and then only will war cease. This is the ultimatum presented to us. Secure the conditions whereby men will entrust their security to a larger entity, or risk annihilation. Persuade men that their salvation rests in the subordination of national and local interests to the interest of humanity, or endanger man's future. These are the objectives, yesterday unobtainable, today essential, which we must labor to achieve. Until this is accomplished, mankind's future remains hazardous and permanent peace, a matter of speculation. In order that the work of evil may not triumph again over this redeemed humanity, all peace-loving peoples must rally together for the definite re-establishment of right and peace. Today, men hope for all a special future, when yesterday we sought only the means to postpone the final Holocaust. If the condition of peace is such as will satisfy the conscience and sense of justice of men, if it is assured to humankind that they shall toil and live happily under a just system in which no discrimination will be made between small and great, the peace system that shall be laid down can leave a heritage for coming generations which will be full of happy life and boundless prosperity. Man is basically a creature of peace. Use your knowledge for good to preserve peace among men.